Of course it did. Alright, 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 alright. After much brouhaha and many much more problems in between broadcasts number 22 and 23, involving and including but not limited to IRL updates, life updates, and 2 fucking trees, it is the 5th of October. And it is Yap-In 23. And it is time for yet another Yap-In with Carl. Titled The State of the Negrohood. Because I am single timber Carl no longer. I can walk through my front yard without having to go into the woods. Hello, hello. How are we doing? Still getting a couple of things wound up, and we'll find ourselves out and on the way. So, for people who have somehow missed this information, 2 tree limbs fell on my home. We needed to move the lumber in the wood. It was a community effort from my actual neighborhood. We were able to not only cut down the limbs, but now be able to help have mutual friends come and take the lumber away, because there's nothing we can do with it, and everything else has been put to the street so that it can be transported by 310 or 311, whatever the fuck they're called, which is the government arbor aid that is specifically designed for taking away house trash, rubbish, and garbage piles. In this case, refuse piles of compostable materials. The wood, the logs, the timber, all the leaves, everything. In the meanwhile, I have gone through several processes, and I'm still going through several processes to finalize my caregiver and groundskeeper training and verification process so that they can start putting money in my hand. Same time, we were coming off of interactions and engagements with other audiences and communities. We are currently going through what will be month 3 of our content drive, which will end on October 29th. And currently, the standings on our drive is as follows. We are currently at a point in the payment cycle where, unironically, most of the donation track is being carried single-handedly by community member Exopressure. Those that were unaware and did not join said content, we were able to speak to directly and now have as a member of the audience the content creator behind the Jaden and Jasmine series, Liddell Parks. As for the standings on the numbers on the standing are as follows. We are currently sitting at $605.79 on the donation tracker. We are slowly barreling our way in the direction of the 1K goal, which I feel like we will decide what that would be once we get to have the cross-community hangout. It's not all going to happen instantaneously, because I still need to then collate, sit down with the other content creators, and decide how we're going to use the money that is there. because of the recent emergency, as I already discussed with Wheezy the last time I was live, there has been some money that has had to be used for the emergency. Because since I work from home, I do not hold a normal job. And because they have not been properly paying me for the past 4 years, some of that money has had been used for the household emergency. Against my will. It has had been used on the house, it's had been used on groceries. It's obviously been used to fund the content that people have asked and requested for, especially from the hands of that of Exo Pressure. Money being given so that it can then be spent specifically for things like Street Roads, Jaden and Jasmine, obviously, Pendulum Swing, Wander Stars, To the Moon, Pendulum Swing with Venter, and other such titles, as well as other pieces of content that I purchased myself for the purposes of setting up for the content, so we have plenty of games and plenty of things to play and do. That being said, that it does not mean that we are sitting on $0 and 0 cents and there's nothing to be given. Because this has always been a tracker of what potentially will be in the pot. And there's always the chance that other content creators will throw things in said pot. That being said, for the sake of completeness, and ensuring everybody knows what's going on and what's being done, repeating this here so that it is made aware to those that are not directly engaging in the content. At the same time, the cross-community sub-count still sits at 2, which means we are 3 away from getting new alerts made from content from this year and last year alone for in-community group memes. Same thing with live streams, same thing with everything else on the sub-reward tracker. I don't know what to tell you. You guys prefer giving money than necessarily subbing. Not angry, I'm just confused. And of course, as still stated, we are going to continue to take questions from the audience about what should be used for the poll when we get to doing the 1K reward goal. At this time, that is everything that I have to say about where we currently stand as a community. As the title, or rather as the thumbnail shows, I've been looking at the conversation being had around such games and such updates, such as the Xbox Ultimate Game Pass update, where they are now fleecing you for even more, with even less value, and they did so without giving you any warning, as well as the fact that Ghost of Gote, as it has now been released, everyone is critically panning it as a pile of dog shit. From bad mechanics that require you to slowly and very, 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 very autistically play the game in a way that would require a button press if it was Monster Hunter, or any other game that requires survival tactics. The company behind Ghost of Gote went as far as to try and green screen in the text that came from the 1 million copy sales of Sandfall Interactive's game, Player Obscure, Expedition 33. Embarrassing all around for everybody involved. Though there's more people who have opinions about the Xbox Live subscription than they necessarily do about everything else. Be it as it may, we can get into all that for those who have questions and more. And to do so, please make sure that you are entering into the lobby, that you use !Yap-In, and that you are then waiting and standing by to be dragged in one at a time so that we can have the conversations. Put the blurred out of the way. Tell me how you feeling today, chat. How you doing? How's your mama? How's your daddy? How's your sister? Lord have mercy, he's doing it again! Lord have mercy, he's doing it again! Ah! My body! Crusher's doing it to me! I literally don't know what to say, chat, other than thank you. Thank you, 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 thank you. Oh my god, that meme is stuck in my head from TikTok. I feel like I'm getting the full J-Mac treatment. Is my name Adam and Sitch? Xbox went full mask off, and yes, Ghost Guild Play just didn't need to happen. Well, there's conversations about that. I've seen people say the same take that I've already given, which was, why did we choose to go with the dysgenic fat lesbian that is in an abusive woman-loving woman relationship when we could have had Karen Fukuhara? And apparently the answer is that they didn't want her. They specifically wanted Erica. So the fat dysgenic lesbian wearing booty shorts was the only choice that they could get. They couldn't get any other choice. I don't know how the fuck that works. And at the same time, I've seen the gameplay. I wouldn't call that gameplay. I'd call that embarrassing, but I wouldn't call that gameplay. In fact, if I go to the parts of my timeline where I pulled said images from, see if I can find it. Here we are. We've got examples of just wanna grill me, such as this here. Been trying to beat Savage Omega Planetes and Monster Hunter Wilds, which is like juggling chainsaws with your feet tied to a straitjacket with 3 other people in the room on fire and the building collapses in 40 minutes. But enjoy cooking that fish. Such compelling gameplay. Ghost of Yote is a 10 out of 10, and I'm cooking this fish with my DualSense. Moving it across the fire to cook it in different spots and flipping it so it does not burn. Isn't that exciting? There's more. It's the question if I can go find it because it's so far compacted across my timeline. Here's another one. And yet, in neither do they crash through the ice and flail, banging at the underside of the ice sheet as they try to resurface so they drown, and the game uninstalls itself afterwards. Ghost of Yote 2025 versus Red Dead Redemption 2018. Rockstar Games is still the master of open world titles. Again, fun content, fun gameplay loop. Isn't it great? Isn't it amazing? And then, another one that I literally took from the VOD not too long ago and used as a part of the image. This. Ghost of Yote's Unreal Howl.
Spare me, spirit, please! Don't hurt me! Spare me, spirit!
Killed the enemies without taking damage with the Unreal's Howl.
Don't kill me! No! No! It's the Onryo!
Isn't that exciting gameplay, chat? Isn't that exciting gameplay? It's such exciting gameplay. It's so cool. It's so great. This is definitely worth your time and money, and is definitely worth buying an entirely expensive console to play it on. Sony and every other company has done it again. I can't help you if you think that's cool. I'm sorry. I can't. It's not good. Like, this is a place beyond movie games. It is dog shit in its design, and desperately so. Now, first up, welcome, Boster.
Hello. Sorry. Now I had to clear it. Hello.
How you doing?
I'm doing just fine. I was actually going to ask you about the whole Xbox subscription that has been increased out of nowhere, effectively. Like, I'm just curious, what are we going with it? What's like the next logical step for those companies to increase such a ludicrous price? And I'm really confused. I'm really confused on why did they do that in the first place. Is it because they are really crashing? Is the entirety of the AAA industry really crashing or something? I know there's a lot of questions. Maybe let's just turn it down to one question. What will be the main reason on why did they increase the subscription price? Let's go with this one.
I can answer all of them, honestly, because they all come from the same source. Capitalistic greed. The original deal that was sold with the idea of Xbox Game Pass is the exact reason why I crashed out multiple times and has made Day 1 and Game Pass to be a never-ending meme that has brought me nothing but internal joy, but also dismal sorrow. So, to understand this, you need to understand the fall of such services like Lootbox, and the fall of such services like Humble Games and the Humble Bundle, as well as the Humble Monthly subscription. The idea is, I give you money for a monthly subscription. In that monthly subscription, I then have, as a part of my business, I give you content. I give it away for free, alongside your money as a trade-off for your continued investment in business. The idea being, you're getting more value out of the ownership of the titles, digital or physical, but almost always digital, than you would lose for the customary primary purchase for the content that you are receiving. So, both on screen and inside of the Discord, this is what it looks like for Humble Bundle currently today. They give you a setup. The idea being, you get to have games with what they now call Humble Choice. You spend $10 and you get to grab things like WWE 2K25, The Plucky Squire, Spellforce Conquest of EO, and other great games in September's Humble Choice. The idea being, you get 1 month of choice for only $10. This, of course, being a limited game sale. Alongside the actual monthly subscription, you have box bundles that come alongside a bunch of other things. So, things like the Latin American Game Showcase. You get to see a payment value of what we call pay what you want. The value of all total games in this bundle, for everything from Enigma of Fear to Calibra and the Souls of Limbo, which we did see during the newest fest of Game Fest titles that were premiered, especially for the South American region, as well as Dream Core, The Bunny Graveyard, and 9 Years of Shadows. It is a value of $183 money, but you get to pay what you want. But the idea is that there is at least a baseline payment. You have to pay at least 8 or more. And hey, it all goes to charity. And you get all 11 items based on the money you used to have. And you can even see where your money's going. Based on most of the things like the Green Fest games and the other hippy-dippy bundle presented during Summer Games Fest, this is a much better tracking of your cash in your dosh. However, the idea is still the same. You are giving money not necessarily to buy the game, but to be given a bundle of titles, which is basically the equivalent of double Bs, single Bs, and triple Bs during the housing market crisis. They take a bunch of games you may or may not have heard of, they stick them inside a bundle, and they say, pay this much. Now, this is the trick. Entering their last song, Flintlock, The Siege of Dawn, Steel Rising, Astrogos, Achilles, Salt and Sacrifice, and Elderborn. These were trash games. These games were failures! Commercially or actively panned, critically and commercially. These are dog shit. Most especially Flintlock, The Siege of Dawn. They are on the level of things like South of Midnight. And yet, here they are, earning money. Pay at least $6 to unlock all 7 games. Or rather, I should actually be more accurate. If you pay $6, you get 3 games. You pay $10, you get 5 games. $16, then you get all 7 games. But they want you to be suggested to give extra money. So they're earning extra dollars, and they're getting extra purchases, which do go towards the game's actual extended life value. To say, look, here's all these people who slept on this wonderful, this hidden gem title. And at the same time, it is a way to get more information and attention out there for the titles that are being included. This can be done for anything. You can do this for games, they do it for books, and they also do it for software. This, unironically, being how some people are able to get things like what I have. I actually got my copy of Sony Vegas 14 using this. I could have stolen a copy off of the internet somewhere using something like Pirate Bay, but it just so happened to be at the time I was given it because I already was a subscription user of Humble Choice. And then, when you go to Humble Choice itself, and you actually look at the titles, and the spread of those titles, they've got 2K25, Destiny 2 to be exact, the Legacy Edition, and they're giving it away free with membership, which would be a value of $69.99, but let's round it up and say $70. So, 2K25, $60. Destiny 2 Legacy Edition, $70. Plex Wire, $30. Spellforce, Plex, damn you, $30. Return to Monkey Island, $25. Eastern Exorcist, $18. Speed Freaks, $20. Grapple Log, $15. IGN Plus, a free $5 subscription for a month of IGN Plus. All of that's being given away from you. And then at the same time, should you choose to become a part of the Humble Choice, you also get access to a DRM-free download system called The Vault. There are multiple games that are inside of here. One of them being examples of such raid games as Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy, or Roombo First Floor, or Co-Open, or A Short Hike, or Volantia, or another thing that I have saved on my hard drives called Fortune 999. Various different levels of indie titles and even big blockbuster titles designed to be indie rage slop games to get played by content creators like Paid Money Moe, or the group of people like Co-Carnage and the Broken Frames podcast. These titles are all inside of here, and it's all with the intention of trying to support charity, which has always been a good value and itself a good presentation for how to give opportunity away to people. But the idea is, you think about this, and alongside what Extra Crusher is saying in chat right now, why are you giving people a fucking free membership subscription payment to Destiny, a game that is on a sinking ship? And why are all these titles grouped together like this? Where's the actual consistency? Where's the cohesion between the titles? It doesn't exist. And it's the exact same question with the Xbox Live payment system. The idea behind Xbox Live was you pay the money so that you can play a game online. If you get that being the concept itself, then Xbox Game Pass is just the same kind of jip that you say that you're getting across everything else. But in terms of that actual payment value, what does that actually look like when you actually use it? What are you actually buying? From their own words, they are giving you the ability to discover your next favorite game. You have the ability to play on all of your devices. Play on Xbox, play on console, play on devices that have mobile cloud gaming. You can enjoy your Xbox benefits and rewards, and you get to grow your accessible library with new games that get added each month. You get the advantage to play day one, the same way you would with something like, what do they call it for Ubisoft? Ubisoft One, Ubisoft Choice. You get to play day one with Ultimate and PC subscribers having the ability to play new games, including new Xbox publishings and third-party launches the day that they're released, such as Ninja Gaiden 4, Black of Duty, oh my god, Call of Duty Black Ops 7, High on Life 2, Keeper, and The Outer Worlds 2. The ability to play on all your devices, and getting to enjoy benefits with Xbox Game Pass. The ones that were just included being ones that are upcoming, such as getting multiplayer games, earning rewards with Xbox Game Pass, being able to have in-game benefits that are added to games, such as Valorant, League of Legends, Call of Duty Warzone, and Rainbow Six Siege, as well as streaming and playing anywhere, and having the ability to have Ubisoft Plus Classics. Discovering iconic games from the most memorable franchises, dog shit franchises, memorable franchises. Far Cry, Assassin's Creed. I don't recognize this one. And what I can only assume is The Division. As well as, more importantly, trying to get you hooked onto that entire backlog and catalog that they more or less have abandoned to either abandonware or being just another title in a library of titles that doesn't really entice you. Look, there's Tailspin's Area Zal, right next to all of the EA sports games, and The Sims 4, and Battlefield, and Dead Space, and Apex Legends is here too. You know, the game that they abandoned to all those hackers, the game where if you're in a lobby with a hacker and you're not hacking yourself, your account gets banned too. That one. The same companies that have all been acquired by venture capitalist third money and sovereign money. That sports washing that I'm always moaning about, it's infecting your game now. As well as the Fortnite crew. Getting 1,000 V-Bucks every month and more, because now that Fortnite has permanently lodged itself into the multiplayer strata, it now exists as another place for you to access the extravaganza of fun that is the everything game. Especially those of you who actually like playing a game that's basically an actual battle royale without having to be forced to learn how to build. For those of you who play no build. All of these things are inclusive to the background of the gaming ideas that they are encouraging you to become part of. And it was always a Trojan horse. That is the short answer. If you want an explanation of why is it like that, Boster, it was a Trojan horse from the beginning. They gave you a service at a reduced price, and they gave it to you thinking, wow, you're stealing from us. Like, we're giving our money away. Meanwhile, in the background, they're laughing maniacally. Because they were always going to pull the rug from under your feet. It was always going to be a rug pull. They take things away, like the ability to be able to get Xbox Game Pass by using reward points, so you must pay with your money. They put things that you otherwise would want to have in the premium inside of the Ultimate, meaning that you now must pay an extra $16 for the total of $30 a month. And it was done with literally no warning. Done literally the same day, if not one day later after its announcement. Meaning it was in the plans for the longest time. So the same characterization of the rug pull that we all experienced with Helldivers, they didn't even give us the courtesy of having 6 months or years of knowing, saying, hey, it's not going to be like this forever. They just did it. They held us down and they raped you. And they let themselves do it by giving themselves license to do it in an unironic The Outer Worlds fashion. Because did you not read the company policy? Would you sign yourself away as property? And then they tell you to take the fucking rag, clean yourself off, and get yourself guzzied up. You're going out into town. Smiles and waves, everybody. Smiles and waves. It is, as it always has been, about the profits. It was always about the Benjamins. It was never about the player. It was always about the profit. It was always about the profiteering margin, as well as being unoptimized pieces of trash. So, it is a jip. It was a lie that was given away to you. It was always meant to be a way to get you comfortable with digital market ownership. And now that they have gotten enough of you hooked, they are taking away your free hit, and they are getting you addicted to fentanyl. But hey, don't you want to get it day one and Game Pass? Don't you want to be the first streamer to be able to broadcast the game immediately? Come on! Value, guys! Value! 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 Get it day one and Game Pass! Give me your money. I deserve it. This is how it's always been. What are you gonna do? Stop? It's an addiction cycle. And I don't necessarily like to toot my own horn, but boop, boop. Any person who has any kind of trust in the system would have seen this coming a mile away. A mile away. It's no one's fault, mind you. As consumers, we don't get to decide how the company spends our money, or how they try to sell towards other people in mass, because this is the consequence of allowing gaming to become more casual, and thus also more appealing to multiple marketplaces. It's not necessarily an elitist problem, because it's been framed as an elitism problem. Like, lol, you guys think that gaming is supposed to be belonging to the FPSs, but it is actually always been the idea of bringing in all of the people and putting them all inside of the Xbox internment camp, sponsored by HETAP, and funded for by the Saudi Arabian Qatari investment fund. The fact that some of these companies have recently been acquired by that same sovereign money, and they are going private, means you don't actually have any leverage upon which to negotiate this problem. There are plenty of people who are dropping it for cash, and I agree with you, you should take your money elsewhere. They have lied to you, they tricked you, they changed the deal without negotiating your terms, and you are now left up the fucking shit's creek without a fucking paddle. But more importantly than that, the people responsible for making the deal have already jumped out of the plane with a golden parachute. Certainly, their names are mud, but it's now in control of people who are more than happy to continue the profit cycle, because there is no incentive to not continue the profit cycle. They get more from spending your cash and continuing to make the bogus deals that will be blown off as memes than would have been in the time period of The Last of Us Part 2. So, by that I mean, where The Last of Us Part 2 needed to save face by creating a shell company to claim the content and money, and stop reviews and opinions of the game from being everywhere before the game was relaunched, to save face and grace. The same way that they are currently conceiving about the sales of Ghost of Yotai. They don't even need to invest in using a shell company to silence your opinion. They're just going to do it. And they're going to keep ignoring you while they do it. So, the only real tactic that you have as a consumer is to effectively pick and choose the deals that you used to be a part of. Basically, when you see a deal that's worth subscribing for, you subscribe at the minimalist level that you can afford, or that you would like to pay, and you negotiate that deal as you see firmly, which comes from a tweet from the other Frost that I'd like to actually show you all, who actually put it very succinctly. If I can find him. There he is. Which should be... where? Right here. His tweet reads... wrong screen. His tweet reads, "It was a great deal while it lasted. I think the play now is to wait until February of each year and then play all the games from the previous year that caught your eye, then up-sum within a month or two. Since Xbox Game Pass is being increased in price by 50% to $29.99 per month from $19.99, as well as Xbox adding new benefits, including Fortnite Crew Pass access." That is the whole form explanation, Buster, from beginning to end. The company is putting value on something that is not valuable to the player base en masse, They have used your endowed trust in Microsoft and Xbox as a brand to fleece you out of your money and to now perpetuate you in a permanent deal where if you would like to continue enjoying games the way that you always have through the use of Xbox Game Pass and any tools that go alongside your purchase with Xbox Game Pass, that you must now accept a bogus deal that has new terms, that is operated and kept up by people who you don't know and who you don't recognize, like your favorite store or your favorite restaurant has replaced your favorite server, your favorite waiter, or even your favorite streamer with somebody who you don't know. So instead of single player Carl, it would be multiplayer Carla, and this female woman is supposed to be my replacement. You say, where's single player Carl? I'm looking for Carl and Carl Clean Company. And they tell you, nope, no person like that here. They no longer work at this company. And also, the prices have gone up significantly. The only choice is to either decide that you're going to accept the terms of this new deal, or to tell them outright to go get bent and to take your money elsewhere. But you're never going to live back in the future that you were promised back when they first gave you Xbox Game Pass. That is done. It has always been done, but now it's officially done. What do you think of that?
Well, I think you're right on the money, and I also came into the conclusion that they basically turn us all into addicts, because this is basically hooking you up with a very good prime stuff, and then we're gonna sell you absolute dog shit. And what you gonna do? Not take drugs? But yeah, it's terrible. It's almost depressing, I would even say. And as you said, because I was going to follow up the question of what are you supposed to do? Find better deals. Just be more aware, be more aware consumer. I don't even like the name consumer. I would say customer, but that's besides the point. So it's just depressing, man.
I would argue that's actually the point. Because if you're just a consumer, you're going to open your mouth and swallow the price anyways. You didn't care about the price if you're just a consumer, because you're just consuming product and getting excited for next product, which is exactly what they want. That's how slop is generated. Nobody has any criticisms, nobody has any concerns. You open your mouth, you swallow the hamburger, you say, it was a hamburger, and then you eat the next one. And maybe the next one has trace amounts of shit. And it keeps getting more and more trace amounts of shit until it's an entire soft patty of feces. By the time it's an entire patty of feces, what does it matter? You were consuming it before, keep eating it again. You don't want to
keep eating, fatty.
Like, you wouldn't want to be called a Nazi, would you? Nazis reject what everything else everybody has, and other talking points like that. Yeah, the job is to be a customer, not a consumer.
I miss the days when we just wanted to play games, man. But as you said, those days are gone, effectively. And that's my other point, if I may. I'm not even mad at myself in the current situation, because it is what it is. We can only learn from the current predicament and be just more wise. I'm just feeling sorry for everybody who comes after us, the new gamers, the new people, because they don't know any better. I mean, at the end of the day, they're thriving on the fact that those people who come after us, the generation of gamers, just are inexperienced. They don't know anything. They didn't experience effectively being tricked, and they're just grooming them into being a modern audience that they're just a prime to get even more fucked. Pardon my French.
You do not need to say your Francois with me, sir. The problem isn't so dire. It's not that Generation Alpha and Generation Omega do not have tastes. Because the Zoomers do, in fact, have tastes, and they are actually partial to these conversations. They might not have the personal experience, but the fact that many of us have recorded what it used to be like in the yesteryear of games, and we all have the ability to still give our opinions, where conversations have not been restricted by control, this modern audience, which is the Twitch audience, is not capable of beating back the opinions the rest of us have, because us being overly opinionated fucks is the reason why they have to do bait and switches like this. The idea itself is a very poor persuasive argument, which is that everybody does it, therefore you shouldn't have a problem with it because everybody else does it too. But that's not the reality of why the business deal is itself shit. It is a destruction of the trust had between what I'm going to call the old facts versus the new facts. That is an internet term. It basically means new people and old people of the internet. The old guard and the new guard. The new guard live in a time period where they are at the mercy of what the current zeitgeist is. And all of the old guard belong to a world that does not exist anymore. Metaphysically speaking, that means we are a generation that has lived through multiple world wars, multiple tragedies, and multiple impacts upon civilian life that have directly affected the history that we have lived through and that we have studied and or have been a part of since the day we were born. So for some people, that means that they have witnessed the Twin Towers fall. They have witnessed the War on Terror. They have witnessed the beginning of the unshittification of the internet and the bean-soupification of conversations and content online. They have been there for the moral fagging. They've been there for the nanny state. They've been there for the destruction of their European Union and for the eventuality of Brexit, and then for the inbratification of their country. They have been there for the protectorate status of having mommy and daddy internet from companies like Riot Games ban their best streamers, only for them to immediately turn back on their ideas and say, actually, toxicity is good, only when it's funny. Come on, Tyler One, we actually want your content, but don't you dare ever play any of our games ever again, IShowSpeed. The nanny state of Valorant said so, because a woman cried online, and other such actions of Google Dockies, and public cancellations, and cancel pigs, and people who are trying to conflate cancel pig behavior of persecuting people who didn't do anything wrong with archaeological grievances with people who have actually done wrong things, who have used your standards against you to say, it's okay to lie to you as long as I didn't actually lie, but they did lie, based on the dumbass words that came out of their mouth the moment that they said it live on a camera, which then led to the sales of companies, the shuttering of companies, the reabsorption of companies, all based around the actual history of game sales and whether or not those game sales actually provided real profits. So, the long-form jokes that could come from people like the Spoony One concerning Final Fantasy XIII and the relevant wide guard opinion that people do not like the fabulous new Tales to Crystal and the entirety of Final Fantasy XIII as a franchise, which includes the first game, the second game, and Lightning Returns, and anything that takes part of the Avesel Chronicles, which is actually a lot of Final Fantasy titles, including Tactics and other such beloved titles. The individual opinion of, well, the game franchise could have probably been bad, but apples to oranges, can you really say that Lightning Returns is worse than Forspoken? Can you say that Forspoken is better than the reinvention of Ratchet and Clank based on the movie update tie-in? Can you say that the original Ratchet and Clank franchise is worse than the additional future saga that was created in the same period behind Crash Bandicoot? Can you say that the Twinsanity arc of Crash Bandicoot is worse than Crash 4, It's About Time? Can you say that Crash 4 is better than the Insane Trilogy, even though they were technically created by the same groups from various games? Can you say the same thing about Spyro? Could you say the same thing about Diablo? All, of course, made by the same group. Could you make that same opinion about any of the Friend Swap games that are coming through? More recent one that was just announced not so long ago being something like King of Meat, in the same competitive space as Repo and Among Us and Lethal Company and Content Warning and so on and so on and so on. The new generation of games and gamers will always be an evolving paradigm that leads more towards a cliff than a plateau. But in terms of personal experience, that plateau is actually a very steep flat plane. It's a very long, steep flat plane. And across that plane is the entire history of the industry. They are getting to the point where they are having to reinvent rather than create new. And making new content is hard, because the same game loops and the same cycles that you've always seen are never going away. You can't get rid of the game cycles. So, by that edge, Borderlands 4, a franchise that started as a great example of exactly the inculcation of getting a generation hooked to a mechanic, namely Diablo with guns. ARPG, without making it feel like an ARPG. The kind of ARPGs that I play, where there's systems upon systems upon systems, but they're not all happening at the same time. They're introduced slowly. The same thing put into Diablo, and put into Path of Exile, and put into Path of Exile 2, specifically for the new players to get a handle on the old system as an onboarding style, is the exact same onboarding system that they used the entire time in the Borderlands franchise. And yet, Take-Two Interactive and Gearbox have been horrible stewards of their own invention and design, because Randy Pitchford does not care about the modern gamer. He cares about the time capsule of gamer between the era and period of Borderlands 1, Tales from the Borderlands, Borderlands 2, Borderlands 3 sequel, and the beginning early days of Borderlands 3. That being the entire content load that was that era, as well as the career of the nepotism siblings, both Ashley and Anthony Birch. These content cycles are, you find a content, you find a mechanic, and you just keep slamming that mechanic into everything. So, for some generations, it was RTS. For some generations, it was CRPG. For some generations, it was first-person shooter. Some, it was first-person looter shooter. For some, it was first-person extraction shooter. For some, it was first-person squad shooter with light, if not heavy, PvP elements and tactics. It was the same, but milsim, such as things like Planet Side 2 and EVE Online, and so on and so on. But to the scope of Borderlands, you got a game, very simple, humor, jokes, content, and endless play cycle to get better loot and to get a better version of your weapon. You go into Borderlands 2, you add in world content and lore and history and characters. Characters people become familiarized with. A culture they become familiarized with. Even enshrined into its own lore with things such as the Headhunters pack for the Son of Primarex. Glorifying a literal bug in Borderlands through the form of the Ledge in DLC 3 of General Knox for Borderlands 1 as the quintessential peak of what content is supposed to be. Which then, into Borderlands 3, into the new Tales of Borderlands, and finally into Borderlands 4, is unoptimized, horrible slogs of sloppy Joe content. No flavor, no material, no substance. Not really enjoyable if you really think about it, because you can't even play it for longer than 2 to 3 hours at a time. And after the first hour, literally on console, your fucking ability to play the game goes down. You are losing frames the longer you are playing it in a single session. Forget the problem that existed with Epic Games Store actively giving you a version of the game that was literally a spyware bug, where if you ever went underneath a certain data range, your game was cut off automatically. Forget that entire argument, even though that should go up there too as a part of reasons why we should not trust you. That entire sphere of gaming glazed over giant, massive issues with nostalgia and memes. Redditor memes, even. It was made for a Redditor. That was the peak of what they could handle. Now we live in a time period where gamers don't understand the genres that others appreciate because they don't play them. And they don't play them not just because of interest, but because they have been told that's not what good gaming is. That's not what gaming's supposed to be. So you have people that are addicted to something like Friend Swap that are probably going to buy things like King of Meat in giant proportions if they don't somehow find a deal to put it day one on Game Pass. They're going to try to get them to latch themselves onto that game, the same way that there are generations of people who are still playing Dead by Daylight with a company that is really bad at their gameplay, such as Behavior. And the same problem that has been the case all of the time that it has been material to the gaming sphere. The older generation that's seen this shit before is like, That's bait. I'm not buying that shit. Because I know what's going to happen. If I ever buy it, I'm not buying it day one on Game Pass. I'm getting it 90% off on Steam. The newer generation, who has no context to these tricks and these scams and these deals, they're the ones that are earning the Fell For It Again awards. They're the ones that are getting 61-time placards of what would basically be the equivalent of a Gaming Darwin Award, where they fall for the okey doke. They fall for the advertisement. They fall for the campaign. They fall for the marketing. Because it's new content. It's a new title. Why do you guys have to be so desperate? Why do you have to be so dour and always doubt them? You say everything's bad. You say everything's shit. You say nothing ever happens. And then time and time again, when relevant, nothing does never happen. They tell you the game is supposed to be great. It's supposed to be peak. Because it's coming off the tail of a massively successful first game. And yet, look stage left at Ghost of Yotai for no more of a better example of exactly what that trick looks like. And despite the fact that the rug got pulled from underneath them, they keep falling for it. Now, for some franchises, like Saints Row, they did it to themselves. They bought the idea that they needed to update themselves for a modern audience. Because it was time. Gaming should never be stuck in a man-baby chud environment. And they are the ones that at least saved you from a never-ending sludge purge of that content. Because if it ever comes back, it will be an open example for the hope and saviors that are actually helping solve that problem, which is groups such as the Embracer Group that say, we're going to look at the money. And the money says, you're shit, so we're not bringing you back. So then, they will then have that money reinvested a different way. And so, it will be forced to innovate and create new shit. Unfortunately, right now, the problem that is causing that level of degradation and doesn't truly bring the divide as one would hope is that such titles such as Pocket Pair's Pal World now have entered into a phase of being antagonized by other companies via patent trolling. A type of patent trolling that we haven't seen since the patenting of the Nemesis system from Shadows of Mordor. Whether or not it was Nintendo that would do it, or another company that would do it, this is another consequence of that being a world that we belong in that no longer exists, and us being stuck here in the timeline that was broken when the trust was broken between the consumer and the industry. And unfortunately, the reason why the timeline is broken is literally because of Gamergate. When a gaggle of journalists said that they don't need to have gamers as their consumer base and audience, that you can buy into a new trust of a modern replacement that would never have any of the stigma and would have all of the upsides of a new consumer with none of the downsides. The idea was that they could trick an entire industry, because it is a trick, to abandon people you have been taking money from that have no reason to be cut out. They weren't bad customers. They didn't put their feet up on your couch. They weren't causing fights in the equivalent of a lobby that is an endless Waffle House queue, even though there were definitely those lobbies that we all remember from the peak of Xbox Live. Yes, many people being told to goggle their balls and that somebody's mother was getting fucked. They never cheated the companies. They always paid with their money. Even if they got banned, they were willing to buy a new console, maybe even make a new account, maybe even re-up their Xbox Live Game Pass, so they could go back and do it again. No, we live in a future where, because of the inculcation of a combination of activistic journalists, as well as activistic developers, that thought, no, we can change, we can force them to change. We exist in a paradigm where even a company like that of Nintendo of America, not really Japan, and mostly the Pokemon Company alone, but Nintendo has other problems, because we got to talk about that proprietary software that prevents you from using your own games and breaks your console, when they should not be monitoring what's on your system. That's a conversation for another day, or another conversation at another time. You have a company, a developer, trying to stop another developer from making a game because they want to patent the idea of game mechanics. So alongside people like Abu Bakr Salim being bullied for the crime of making a game as an African, and possibly bringing in the ideas of an African roguelike that could play somewhat close to an African Dark Souls. You've got games like Pocket Pair, all of their titles. The dating game, the crafting game, and they got another one coming up too. I forgot what it's called. As well as the collaboration with Once Human that's coming up towards the end of October, I believe on the 29th or the 30th, which in and of itself is another re-innovation of the same problems. Open world survival, but live service MMO, constantly revolving seasons similar to that of the content leagues of ARPGs, and also gliding mechanics similar to what I called the Breath-alike. All of the games that feature the same techniques from the backbone of something like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. You've got games being sued by companies like Nintendo posthumously, not before, but patenting after the game was made, to stop you from using mechanics such as the idea of throwing a spherical device with an overarching hang to capture a digital monster or some type of living flora or fauna inside of a technological object from said spherical device, getting the spherical device to come back to your hand, and then releasing said flora and fauna from the inside of this capture device. The fact that we live in that timeline of events means that in order to make a game, you have to be so outlandish with your idea that it might be hard for some people to get into, because they might not want to play that game loop, because that game loop either is hard for them to attach themselves to, or it's too much like something they already play. And if it's too much like something they already play, you run the risk of getting sued into the ground by a company who's angry at you for innovating on something they have long since been the masters of, but were never able to develop and deliver in the way that you delivered it. And thus you spin the cycle and the wheel of gamer samsara, where there's so many games, but there's nothing to play, because nothing interests anybody, because it's all garbage. And of the games that people do find that are interesting to them, assuming that they're not an autism simulator, or they're not a up to 4, maybe up to 8, maybe up to 12, over online, but 4 with local co-op, couch co-op / friend slop game, where the goal is not to be the best and to be technical, but is to have fun. You can't even have fun, because then that game is either on a very small life support, and it's being ran by a skeleton crew, like that of Tribes of Midgard, even though somehow they have actually made themselves more relevant than Phantasy Star Online 2, especially after the Grim days. Or up-and-coming titles like Avowed are being sold as a part of a new paradigm that's supposed to be the cutting edge of a type of immersive sim, comparative to Morrowind, comparative to Daggerfall, comparative to Skyrim, comparative to New Vegas, and comparative to Fallout 3 and Fallout 4. But they can't deliver because there's some quintessential sauce missing from the pot. Something that keeps people hooked, playing constantly, and willing to sing its praises. And that's if you can get past all the goddamn game bugs. All the fucking laggy, buggy, dog shit connection, crash you in the middle of a mission type bullfuck that makes you stop playing the game entirely. Oh, the game would be amazing if I could fucking get out the goddamn lobby. This cycle, this game cycle, this launch cycle of titles that are like this, and then figuring out which one of your franchises are going to be the one that blow up and they are the bomb that has this internal trick waiting for you. Because they never really gave a shit. It was about trying to get enough people in so they could hit critical mass, so they could start wailing on you. As we now look stage right and look at the first Descendant. Nixon! Even the running jokes of old jokes from like Chaos the One, who made the joke that I just made about fucking Mabi no Guy, retail Mabi no Guy, even less. The newer generations of the new guard, they don't have the context of that because they don't come from a time period where they had to join websites, much like League of Legends was, and join making an account for the browser-based game, or for the text search-based game, or for the game browser launch-based game from AreaNet, IDJI, King of Games, COG Online, and so on, for titles like Last Rappel, Night Online, Flyth, Dungeon Fighter Online, Maple Story, Alliance of the Valiant Arms. Genesis AD was a game that was promised by IDJI, but it never actually released. Not in a real test phase. Combat Arms, Luminary Rise of the Gunzu, and other such titles that would look like AI Chinese slop. Very old AI Chinese slop. Very, very different from the retail WoW and the seasons of exploration and the seasons of entertainment that's coming from WoW Classic, which look even more so like Once Human. They didn't experience all of that history to realize and to see the patterns that the rest of us do. With enough of those gamers in tow, in those places where you can find them, you could actually be able to have that conversation perpetually. And I've seen this conversation happen. I've been a part of it inside of DevCore, one of the sister communities to us, through Short Battle Talking. Members of that community and even moderators of that community that are very wealthy consumers in their own right, talking at edge about the idea of the etiquette that should exist between consumers. That a new player should be capable of playing one of these games and have the time to learn the game before being told, nah, you can't play in this lobby. You're too dog shit. Despite the fact that the entire idea is that it's supposed to be more social. And yet, the social games are antisocial with people who are not willing to learn how to try to become better at the game, but want to make declarative statements about how other people should be formed and how other people should behave, while they themselves being gatekeeping fucks that prevent the game from getting to larger audiences that would have that fun. And all of this, of course, being proliferated through Xbox Game Pass and other services like it. The never-ending narrative of the history of gaming is slowly being forgotten by the newer generation not interacting with the older generation. Some of it, you could say, is that older generation actively saying, listen, if you're not going to appreciate the games as we appreciate them, we're not going to involve you in this shit. And I guess that's valid at some point. For the younger generation, the way that they see it, it is a constant renegotiation of their boundaries that they may not be comfortable with. But that same generation are the same ones that are being groomed to become the modern audience, because their personal takes and their personal preferences then become the context upon which these deals are forged. They become, like the Matrix, agents of the system, because the veterans are unplugged. They've seen through the mask. They see through the masquerade. And yet the newer generations are the ones that are being told that I have to play this. It's the newest hotness. And if they're not unplugged, they are a threat to you just as much as the developer is a threat and even the publisher is a threat. or rather, the publisher then developer, for reasons we've already negotiated and explained, and even demonstrated through the form of game developers who, when we tell them, here's how it's happening, they say to us, nigga, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. I've never seen that before. Either because the developers themselves don't have their fingers on the pulse, or the industry at large does not actually tell people what it is that's going on. So, much like how you could go to fucking TikTok, or you could go to any microblogging social media app and look at the conversation, all of the dumb crazy people is not the entire conversation. And all of the sane rational people aren't the whole conversation either. It's both sides together, blended. So you need the adults, and you need the children, and you need the business, and you need the industry, and then you need the developers, and then you need the shareholders to tell the full scope picture. But the shareholders don't play games. They just look at profits and bean counters. So to really divine the problem, you have to look at the spirit of gaming. And that spirit is dying. That bitch is starving! And thirsty. To sum up, for lack of better yapping, the problem with the industry, you can't necessarily blame on the new guard. The new fags are not the ones responsible. They're part of the problem, but they're not responsible. The veterans are as responsible as the old guard as the new guard is, with being given our tactics and our plans to fix the problem by getting the industry to listen to us. Because we're not all unified in the same direction. And Pirate Software is responsible for getting us all on the same track. Ironically. Because when an industry says you don't have the right to own a game, granted, you don't have the right to own a game. You have the right to the memories you made for that game. But the actual physical product that you purchased. The end user license agreement being overridden by the fact that I own the fucking disc. I own the physical copy. I own a DRM-free version of the game that I can download from my hard drives and play at any time. The industry trying to tell you that you have no right to your content. And all of us saying, oh really? Watch this shit. Shing! Cancelled, 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 cancelled. Oh, it looks like my wallet does have the control. This is the idea of a Hydra head. Flailing. You technically cut the head off, and out grows the two-headed dime of bitch you thought, and let me show you what's finna happen next. Xbox Game Pass going up and becoming more expensive is a sign of the industry continuing its death spiral. Because the industry is still dying. Understand it. It never not was dying. It continues and will continue to die. But before it dies, it ain't gonna make you pay a lot of money. And what it evolves or decomposes into, and what we're able to do with the corpse afterwards, that's a separate conversation from the current zeitgeist and the current culture amongst people because of that concern. So, the amount of effort that could be used to negotiate that is a harder question that does not really have an answer. Because it's not an answer that we are supposed to answer. It's a generational question that they have to answer. So the newer generation has to answer whether or not they feel comfortable with being forced to be nickel and dimed for everything. And being told that they have to get it day one in Game Pass. And that the only way to get the game's access is to basically just open your mouth up and hope that it's strawberry and not cum. Some people are happy with this deal. They are Sony ponies. They are console pantaloons. They are happy with being lied to, and they are more than happy to continue taking the sloppy seconds from the industry as a whole. However, there are some that are not happy with this deal, and they would like to be treated like they deserve respect. Both sides have their favorites, and they have their shills. Some more recognizable, like the Yap-Man, than others. But because of the death of the industry, and the fact that people are now realizing that certain people are in fact shills, even if it's not happening in places that you might notice, it is happening. There are enough people recognizing that the way forward is to actually just start asking yourself, do you want to buy in? And do you have to buy in? I'm of the opinion that there are some games that are intergenerational, that you need to play them in order to understand the viewpoint of the yesteryear. I also believe that there is a new type of game, a new era of gaming, that if you don't experience it, you are missing out on those newer gems that will become the fan favorites of those generations in yesteryear. So, for someone like myself, titles like the original .hack quadrilogy and the GU trilogy, and Dark Cloud and Dark Cloud 2, aka Dark Chronicle, or all of the mascot gems of the PlayStation 2, are comparative to the newer generation as Fortnite, at least in its no-build phase, and in its original Save the World / Battle Royale phase when it first released and launched. They all look back at them the same ways many of us look back at franchises such as Borderlands and Dead Space, and the original Call of Duties. Or even just specifically COD Zombies and the entire timeline of Primus and Extremis and the original Aether and eventually the Chaos timelines. They will look back at them and say, man, gaming was really good back then. Too bad it's dog shit now. So yes, things like Doom 16 multiplayer, Quake Champions, Outlanders, Happy Wars, Evolve Stage 2, Battleborn, fucking even Borderlands. They'll look at these games and they'll look at the time periods that they came from, and they'll start to notice the same pattern that many of us have started to notice. And then they will be stuck with the hard knowledge that comes directly from our cursed book of gamers. They will be the ones that have to live through the eternal darkness of the game sphere. And they too were going to have to do battle against the corporate three outer gods of corporate greed and public trust and sovereign money. And unfortunately, there is no comparative fourth deity of Montauk that is comparable to the Gamer Plight. There is no deeper meme magic and fun that is secretly saving all of gamer humanity. There is no fourth god because that fourth god was dead. And we killed it a very long time ago when we decided that controlling people's opinions because they're literally Nazis was more important than continued conversations. So, the game journalists were the ones that killed that. Certainly, a new outer god could be born, where individual content creators that have earned the trust of people, like me earning the trust of my audience, or content creators like Colt Cassie Cage, or others amongst the soft farmers, or others amongst bigger mainstream factions or mid-sized channels, could be able to be a part of that newer generation of content creator. The Other Frost, another example. Last Free Nation, Richard Lewis, Dustin Thornshields, I can't remember the real name of Monte Crisco. Individuals like Christian Riviera, I Will Dominate, and other figures, as well as Long Island Viper, Colin Moriarty of Sacred Symbols Plus. You'll always have individual content creators who will attempt to call out that sphere of influence, but you will not have a trusted game journalist sphere that exists as that fourth out god, because they corrupted themselves to try to become ivory tower angels that would exist outside of the firmament of the gaming sphere. They wanted to be the people that would uphold the sphere to their standards, but they abandoned everybody else in concert of trying to do it. And so, as they tried to make a name for themselves, just like people like Alana Charizard, Alana Pierce, have tried to promote their personal careers in business, banging the same drum of selective and intentional lies to the public to save face so they can make money off of you. The same way that you saw with the Weeb Wars of the internet amongst Crunchyroll, Funimation, and other VA groups attacking people like the fans of and the industry created by actors such as Crispin Freeman and additionally Victor Joseph Monona. You have seen the same problem happen in its consort across the entirety of the spectrum of gaming. So Dean Takahashi and Jada Jackson and Nathan Grayson and obviously Lee Sarkeesian and obviously Zoe Quinn, also known as real name Chelsea Van Valkenburg, and all of the Jason Schreierites that were his friends and his underlings before Jason left them behind to make a name for himself at Bloomberg Gaming. And then obviously grifters like, I would say Smash JT at this point is a grifter in terms of the fact that he keeps trying to keep up the energy of Gamergate 2.5/2.0. Acting as though he is the God's gift to gaming, the same way that Grums does. Grums also too. The same thing as you would expect from individuals like Alyssa Mercante and her friend Dave Paul Riviera, who continues the I Am Spartacus routine with his followers under the account names that are basically alleging his original name, which is Airbagged. Things like that. As they cope and seed and mold on other timelines on places like Blue Skull, originally known as Blue Sky. That era and that sphere of protectorate class that is meant to defend and assist and inform the consumers so that they're not consumers but customers, telling them what's in the game before they buy it. This unmoored and unshaveled world that we are now stuck in as a form of eventual and perpetual gaming samsara, not unlike that of Dragon's Dogma and Dragon's Dogma 2. That world that we were promised, it does not exist. The gaming future that I was told would exist when I was 5, now that I am 31, is not here. But what we are left with is the dregs of a society that can recover once they're willing to actually have the real conversation on who is to be trusted and who is to be ignored. And fortunately, that conversation is always being renegotiated every day. Because you can't play this shit and not eventually crash out and say, bro, it sucks. I mean, shit, we saw people get their sponsored streams for things like Mind's Eye canceled, same day delivery. They said something bad about the game, the company says, no, we don't want you playing the game, you can't talk about the game like that. Actors for these projects crashing out, mad that they're not getting the relevancy that they were promised when they originally played it. Meanwhile, over in the area, deliberated and specifically put aside to Hideo Kojima and the women who he's allowed to scope the feet of, they're eating. They're eating good. Unironically, things like Death Stranding and Death Stranding 2 actively showing you it is possible to make a, quote, movie game with movie-rated actors and it still be considered fresh. Again, looking over at the dregs of things that have brought in things like Sandfall to create the French game that all you fucks have played, Expedition 33, you're able to make these games, and you're able to make them fun, and you're able to have jokes with them, where they become instant classics. Because they gave you something that you were told by those same journalists that you didn't actually want. Because they themselves didn't want to do the process of playing through them. They wanted to speed up the process so they could get out more fucking advertisements and get out more deals. Sorry, your job's been taken away from you. You've been replaced by AI. Thanks, Valnet. Thanks for buying those companies and putting them out. The spirit of Hulk Hogan strikes again. We win, brothers! Still. Summary. The gaming world that we originally were given as children doesn't exist anymore. Or rather, it never existed in the way that we were told it would grow up. However, that does not mean that there isn't a way and there is not a path forward. And the more people there are, like me, like the Gator Gamer, I guess, and also the Almighty Lolly, and also Jay, and also Every Frame of Pause, and so on, the more you have to be able to show shit and to glorify the Kino. And with that, the old guard and the new guard will finally be able to join hands and fight against their true enemy with clear eyes, which is the people who would try to charge you the price of a family deal at a chicken place for a fucking subscription to games. Not the game itself, not the subscription that is a lifetime pay once and own it forever, but a recurring monthly subscription to a reduced quality service that they expect you to eat with no question. What's your response to that, Balster?
My response is very simple. Again, right on the head. And I'm glad that I was not going crazy, thinking to myself that, nah, you're just seeing shadows. It's not real. You know, you're just simply coping or something. Again, it sucks, but I'm glad that it's not all gloom and doom, because it's so easy nowadays, especially to go all gloom and doom. If there is one addendum I might want to add before time runs out, would be that, okay, a very simple, quick question. Is it safe to say that when we were at the beginning, as you said, when we were children, when we were exposed to all those games, the golden days, the 90s, the crossing of 2000s, when we were having banger after banger after banger, because the entirety of the industry was just simply, was in its infancy. But now we have at this stage that it's just continuously degrading at the record pace. What's the question? Is it gonna get to the point where we had like in before, when the industry is gonna crash, and then we're gonna have some sort of great restart, that we're gonna have like a middle market where we're gonna have another banger after another banger? Okay, that's a little bit too loaded question. So
is the industry
I guess
going
that's
to
it.
crash? Is the industry going to crash, and is there going to be a golden rediscovery period?
Yes, thank you.
Yes. The industry as it currently exists in its bloat cannot exist in this substrate forever. The corpos have taken too much, and the years of we were promised a certain profit margin and we will increase prices until we hit that margin cannot continue without the firmament of the industry collapsing on itself. The prices is only one part of it. The other part of it is the idea that you're going to punish other people for using ideas similar or inspired off of your source material. Just like the content trolling that happens when it comes to claiming of videos or claiming of content on places like YouTube, that same content trolling and patent trolling by the industry does not inspire creation. It stifles it. All those backroom deals, all those board work problems, all those court cases that are then litigated either in arbitration or happen behind fierce courtroom battles in appellate court decisions that are then appealed and then reappealed and held up forever, causing your favorite games to be stuck in development hell. The true enemy is always been and always will be the corpos. And the corpos are trying to negotiate to a certain price deadline where they can then afford their own Bobby Kotick Goblin branded golden parachute. And then when the industry is broken and dilapidated into something similar to the worldview of Ready Player One, they can price you out of the garbage heap of that future. Where they can try to constantly put ads into everything so that they can squeeze even more money out of the system that they perpetually broke. that industry will crash and burn. Because people will get sick and tired of it. They already are. Various different companies and very different corpos are all responsible for their own versions of it. Hell, we experience this all the time with Helldivers now. We have actively gotten opinions and statements directly from the game designers where they have given us a form of promise about how to solve this problem. If I can go find the media posts. Here we are. That's not it. The other one. I need the other one. High command dispatches.
I am really rooting forward to Helldivers 2 just keeping up the momentum because they really are struggling as of now, but that's a topic for another time.
I'm retarded. It was the first one I clicked on. Allow. I'm all. Carl's retarded. We've seen this already happen in the sphere of Helldivers 2 as a whole. Both for the company talking about it for the game, as well as the perpetual performance problems that prevents you from playing it, as well as a talk from the text blog about their updates that is about how they discuss the challenges of the overwhelming size of the Helldivers 2 install size. Again, posted here on the screen and inside of the Discord for people who are looking at, who are looking only as an audio portion. You have a perpetuation of a promise that needs to be fulfilled between the paying consumers. Technically, we're not paying consumers. We already bought the game lock, stock, and barrel, but assuming you're putting money into the game to buy super credits, paying customer, they have the ability to address the concern and be a part of the solution, or ignore it and say nothing's wrong until everybody stops playing the game again. But this time it's not because Sony actively stopped people from playing the game. It's because they actually cannot log into the game. Because every time they try to jump to a planet, especially an automaton planet, the game pauses, the game has patches, the game has freezes. For me, I use the Epoch. I am an Epoch enjoyer. That weapon is designed where if you hold it for too long, the weapon explodes in your hands. If I can't play the map simply because I'm stuck between stutter frames, where I freeze and then the game unfreezes for 3 seconds at a time, I basically have to predict, am I dead or am I going to get to live? Similar to if the same thing happened inside of Path of Exile 1 and then solved for Path of Exile 2, where the game, if it just can't detect your connection, disconnects you and puts you back in a situation where you can actually have a freeze frame where you unpause it so that you can get back into the combat and not get overwhelmed by overloaded information. You have the same promise and the same micro issue being exemplified in that of Helldivers 2. Because the entirety of Arrowhead has to address not only actual technical problems, but the opinions of people had about the state of existence. So, for Into the Unjust, the release factor of Into the Unjust involved taking the Rupture strain offline on the 17th of September because there was actual technical issues that was causing them to break. They addressed it on the 4th. They talked about it, and they said, please be patient, we're getting on top of it. They then gave patch notes talking about those updates, where they fixed the problem where it was a problem and an issue. They actually changed the problem where it now gave you back the ability to understand how the Rupture Warriors tracked and moved following clients accurately, which would actually level the difficulty of attacks between the client and the host. Because if you're the host, it's no problem. If you're a client connecting to the host through the peer-to-peer system, good luck everybody else. Thus leading to people saying the character is, or rather the strain itself, is undefeatable. Because something that they were told from the game trailer was the case, was not the case, which would have been literal tricking, that would not have lined up with the reality of what they were promised. But then, having to address the problem, broke the problem further than how they had originally tried to solve it. So they said, fuck it, we're taking it offline. This is not worth the quality of game experience that people would be having. Now, immediately after that, they decided to stick the Predator strain in its place, which, nigga, that's like, hey, we understand that you have a splinter in your thumb, so we decided we're going to amputate your leg. But the same problem there is the same communication and refortification to understanding the relationship between the consumers and the players and the developers as it is intended to be. Originally, when this was done, it was a conversation that was had between Johans moving from CEO to CCO. Now it is a communication of all of the parts of the team that is responsible for the problem, communicating between themselves that they are going to try to solve the issue, and they're trying to do so on a fair time period where they can respond back to the majority of the influx of the player feedback that they then asked for, that then helps us change and solve the problems that we have as players, and for them as developers to negotiate a equal-handed solution, where instead of us lecturing them on what needs to happen and saying, if you don't do it, I'm going to punish you with my wallet, them instead deciding, here's what we think is unfair, here's what you think is unfair, let's try to solve these problems together as a group. Instead of the negotiation happening where a person who's completely out of touch tells you there's no problem, and if you keep bugging us again, we can ban you from playing the game permanently, which was the suggestion from people like that of Smite and Smite 2 from High Forge Games. Not that the microphone was muted, it was the fact that the microphone was glitching out, extra pressure, but thank you for telling me. It is not the it was not the communication of it being a problem between myself and Amy, but instead the community of people who have actually been removed from my audience, that they were people who were breaking my rules and behaving against us unfairly and acting out for attention in our audience, that have gone there, that did not like that the way I did things was unfair to how they thought we should do things as a whole. People who are unwilling to pay to the system versus the people who pay to the system, and those of us, Axel Crusher, who pay constantly for the content that they want to see and be a part of. That conversation as a whole is what negotiates the destruction of the entire sphere of the gaming marketplace. Because that's the conversation that needs to be negotiated between all of the groups. Not just one developer to another developer, and not just another developer unto another developer. It's the entire sphere. It's the entire industry. And as we already had devised and discussed before, I'm going back to the squares and circles again, chat. As we had already devised and discussed when I first created this patch in my Obsidian document, it continues to be the case that as a company like Xbox continues to subsume those companies into their coffers, and they take all of these businesses under their umbrella, you still have the publishing company and the developers separated from the players and the consumers, but in this case, customers, because the shareholders get between the conversation and say, I want what's good for us, the business, not what's good for them, the people who buy our shit. Because profits matter more than people. And the problem with this is that this entire conversation, as well as this entire sphere of the conversation, which is that you have people who are not engaging in the cycle of discourse and content consumption to create art, that are then further putting themselves into a smaller sphere of audiences that they can reach by blocking themselves off from the conversation. And then the topics themselves being constrained into their own echo chambers and bubbles. The way that audiences consume that content, the way that they negotiate between each other, the various realms of the conversation that is then had between the top and bottom of the funnel, where people who are paying less are not paying as much as the people who are paying more and adding more. So they have two different spheres of influence between each other. And then, of course, the obvious problem. Entire ideas of how they should be allowed to engage in material, leading to things like the Switch 2 actively trying to push you into buying new content because they will actively punish you for buying previously owned games secondhand. This leads to all of the conditions of a business and an industry to destroy itself from inside. Because you can't solve this problem as the consumers. And you can't solve this problem as the developers and the publishers. But you can definitely destroy this problem if you're a fucking shareholder. The adage that you're looking for here is the master's house and the master's tools. Dumbasses say you can't destroy the master's house and the master's tools because that's the master's tools. Meaning, you cannot solve the problem with the tools that created the problem. Because the people who are creating the problem, they don't see the damage that they're doing. Because in want of a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Most people are only interested in punishing a developer and a publisher for not giving them what they want. And some developers and publishers are only interested in trying to serve to the lowest common denominator. Which basically means, between the two conversations, you have two people who are only interested in talking past each other. Because they're trying to convince the people in the middle. But the people in the middle don't actually understand what is at stake. Because for them, it's just a lot of hot air and bluster. Content, discourse. And then, on the bottom line, when it comes to the profit margin, if the shareholders do not see a return on investment, they just sell it. Which was the case with the ownership of, I believe it was Electronic Arts, into the sovereign money. Sovereign money does not care about the sphere of influence. They'll see profit regardless, because they've spent enough time investing in sports washing that they already have the rest of the business lock, stock, and two smoking barrels down. Evo, firmly in the hands of Saudi money. Technical parts of promotionals for wrestling and shit like that, firmly in the pocket of sovereign money. And so on, and so on, and so on, and so on, and so on. The business industry, the movie industry, the gaming industry, television, Netflix, all of it is a part of the same paradigm. Granted, gaming is just one development arm of that house, but that house is crumbling. The wood is rotted, it's termite infested, it hasn't been serviced for over 50 years, since the last crash! Technically, you'd say 30 in that process, right? Because the last crash was technically in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And then it rebuilt itself again into the modern house that it's become. So, a little bit closer. But still, you have to rebuild out of something. And unfortunately, the problem here isn't the tools, it's the materials. You can't fix this by releasing another fucking game, bro. You can't fix this by trying to release another live service game. You can't fix this by ignoring the issue and trying to launch a new console with more proprietary spyware. The materials, the heavenly materials, the lost prophets, the lost remnants, the remnant that perpetuates this living animatronic. It is the people. The people built the house. We are the materials. The industry itself is the living cost. You need people to build the house. Because the house isn't a house. It's a circle. It's a sphere. It's a space. The space has not been treated to what it needs to have, which is more conversation, not less. Because money is barricading the problem. In order to fix the problem, you actually need to bring in people. But they don't listen to people. They only listen to profit margins. And they bring in people that they themselves are seen as a part of the baseline goal to the perpetuation of the forever war and the forever consumption of the industry as a whole. The industry thinks they can remove the people who made the house and get new people as the material. The modern audience. And they think that they can replace the old facts and the old guard as material that made the foundation and the building of the house. And it keeps corrupting itself because they keep stopping people from participating in the process of building. Building opportunity, building camaraderie, building community, building nostalgia, building legacy. Because legacy doesn't matter to them anymore. Money does. And money doesn't build legacy. It can buy you sponsorship deals. It can buy you open mouth shills. It can buy you advertisement space. But what's the point of buying advertisement space on a website like Twitch where 40% of the users aren't fucking real? What is the point of getting someone like Kai Cenat to do a sponsorship deal for a game when they don't actually like games? To use an example very quickly, everybody wave to pass Carl, everybody. Wave to pass Carl. How long does it take until this catches up? It's up. It's happening. It's happening. But anyways, in the perpetuation of the problem that is the sphere of influence amongst the majority of the browsers and the people inside of those browsers, how do you fix a house that conversations and gaming built when the majority of people do not actually care about real community? You have multiple influencers inside of just chatting. Asmongold is here. Literally who, 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 literally who. Even though this is supposed to be a part of FaZe, and Lacey, who's also a part of FaZe, and another member a part of FaZe. Literally who, literally who, literally who, literally who, literally who, literally who. Hi, Shy Lily. Literally who, literally who, literally who, literally who. Hi, another FaZe member. Literally who, 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 literally who. Well, actually, that's one of the multi-streamers on the multi-language. Literally who. Hi, porn star Alinity. How's your time in Bang Bros and Jerkmate? Do you like being a physical idol of sex? Literally who? Hi, VTuber. Hi, VTuber. Literally who? Literally who? Literally who? Literally who? Hi, Alana. Literally who? 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 And that's the entire sphere of what is the cockroaches. Granted, I shouldn't say that those streamers are cockroaches. I should say that they're the termites. Because they're the ones that are consuming the house. Because for them, consumption is people and conversations drama. And then everything else from there is maybe people having conversations. For every single one of me, and at the same time, for every single Kirsch, who she's live right now, doing I don't know what. Just chatting, I guess. How do you build a house if you have all of these people not talking to each other in that sphere? How do you build community, camaraderie, and opportunity when everybody else is just talking past each other on the same subject matter upon which they solve the issue of the house breaking? We don't necessarily need, but it's not a problem that it exists. We don't need 500 million people all giving their opinions about what's killing the house. What we need is the ability to solve the problem of the house breaking. And unfortunately, paying people like Kai Cenat, because Kai's not live right now, you cannot be able to build a player base. You cannot be able to build camaraderie and community by thinking that what's going to save gaming is for a content creator who specializes only in broadcasting himself hanging out with celebrities as gaming. There's your best broadcast. There you go. Like the Mafia-thon, for what it's worth. It's not going to help gaming. Because how do you get people who are in here to save gaming? Sure, it's saving live stream broadcasting, but it's not saving gaming. You unironically need somebody who builds industry for the gaming sphere, who will then allow conversations to happen, who will bring in new blood. Like you kind of do have to have an Eric July for gaming, kind of. You have to have somebody who's willing to do for comic books what he's doing for comic books right now. And thus, creating that entire sphere for all the influencers that are working alongside him in YouTube. Regardless of whether or not they're called grifters or not, or their content is considered good or not, they're still making shit. And thus, they're adding people to the conversation, not removing them from the conversation, by pricing them out of it. Right now, the industry is pricing people out of gaming, and they're pricing them out of the market pool. And the problem doesn't solve itself over time. It just makes itself worse over time. Until that problem is negotiated, you don't have a solution. Not a real one. You can ignore the crinking in the basement, and you can ignore the fact that you got a leaky roof, but eventually that house is going to break over your head. And it's long since been condemned. But nobody wants to admit that it's a zombie. Nobody wants to admit that the industry as a whole is a zombie. Because admitting that it's a zombie means that somebody killed the industry. If it wasn't me, if it wasn't you, if it wasn't us, it was them. The corpos. Who tried to monetize it for all it's worth, who want to leave gaming as a ghost town. Until they move on to another profit margin. And that profit margin is to make the profit margin of gaming into a lifestyle brand. Just like they did to Marvel. And look over at Marvel. How do you think they're doing right now? There's unironically more life inside the house of DC, not in terms of James Gunn, but in terms of John Cena and Peacemaker, than you can actually find anywhere else. At least in terms of his acting. I wouldn't say that Earth X of the Nazi timeline was very insightful, but what do I know? He's some black guy. All in all, the only way to save gaming is to bring more people in, not push more people away. And unfortunately, the industry and gamers in the industry, as well as game journalists in the industry, are pushing people away because they're not actually willing to become a part of the communities. They're just part of the player base. I'm going to say that again. They're not part of the community. They're part of the player base. And yes, they are technically trying to avoid OSHA while finding out all of the broken columns that exist inside the building. Yes. It's basically the same thing, but they're not willing to accept that there are problems that they caused because they would have to take responsibility for them. And they'd rather say, I guess there's no money here, than say, we destroyed the business, sorry. We're so sorry for breaking your industry, bro. We didn't know charging you more money was going to break it. Oh, I'm so sorry. They're not going to do that. They're not going to do that. It's not going to happen. But more importantly, they are not a part of the community. They're not even part of the industry. They're just game developers and publishers and individuals that are a part of the player and user base. They use gaming. They use gamers. They use gaming culture. They use the memes of gaming culture. They use and are a part of the number of the player base, but they are not truly a part of it. They are basically tourists. In this case, they're investment-based tourists. They go where the money is. The same way that normal culture vultures go where the culture is. And they steal it, and they siphon it. They claim it as their own, and they disappear the second the shit blows up on in your face. dealing with that in that way requires a deeper conversation. And the conversation can't be had when the same people who are responsible for causing it are deciding who gets to have a microphone. To solve it, you gotta bring in new people. You gotta bring in new blood. But yes you do. You have to bring in new people, you have to bring in new blood. And for some people like myself, we're not gonna wait for you to give us opportunities. We're going to make our own opportunities. Because the message will be heard. The death and the destruction and the devastation of the house might not be televised, but the quote revolution will be. Not the one that they tried to make against us, but us against them. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Is there anything else you
Amen to that.
Is there anything else you wanted to ask Ballsy before you leave us?
No, I think we completely exhausted the point.
Okay. Wonderful.
Well, thank you for having me on, and we'll see you around then.
I will be seeing you around and in game.
See ya.
So, ultimately, in my opinion, has been my opinion, if what you want to do is to fix the industry, you have to start becoming stingy misers. Save your money. Become stingy misers. Don't give your cash away to the industry. Don't give to the business unless the fuck you want to. Don't do it. Don't you believe it. It's not worth it. It's dog shit. Become a part of a community that you can actually be a part of. Have fun with people in that community. Put down roots. Become a part of a community. Put down roots. Hold your money. And convince people of good arguments and good investments. And save them from bad investments. It's the only way. It's the only way. Because otherwise, they will give themselves over to things that they otherwise would not find enjoyable. Basically, treat it like a boyfriend or a girlfriend. A personal friend. That's going through a bad relationship. You're one of the angels on their shoulder telling them, girl, guy, why don't you leave their ass? They're bad for you. Because it's a toxic relationship. Thank you, Buster. I have to do the calculations again now. That's 125. It is a constant negotiated conversation between ourselves and themselves, together collectively as a whole. Because they are not willing to have the hard conversation that it might not be that they love you. It might be that they beat the shit out of you because they don't respect you as a person. And in not respecting you as a person, they continue to treat you like you don't deserve respect. And so the problem keeps happening over and over again until you're left with, well, broken legs and a broken arm and a broken everything else. Which I don't know what to tell you, man. I wouldn't know what to tell you. Because the problem is that I do know what to tell you. I know exactly what to tell you. And it's not even glowing and beating on my own horse. It's like, girl, why are you letting this person beat the shit out of you? They don't love you. Leave them. Dude, she tore your car apart. She lit your car on fire. She lit all your clothes on fire too. She killed your dog. She doesn't love you. Leave her. Leave him. But you can't save people who don't want to be saved. They don't want to be saved. Don't save them. They don't want to be saved. Don't save them. They don't want to be saved. Don't save her. Also, the pot, or rather, the number is now at 730.79 cents. We are less than 300 away from 1,000. It is 9 minutes till 5. I'm going to ask questions to the audience, or rather, I'm going to be open to questions to the audience in chat until there is another speaker inside the live room. Feel free to ask me more of your questions so that I can continue floating this timer above my head. Because otherwise, I will end the stream in 8 minutes. As I go looking through my backlog and see all the tweets that are currently happening as we have been streaming. Yes, porn. Beautiful, delicious porn. Lots of porn, oh my god. Oh Lord have mercy. Oh Lord have mercy. Oh, I'm learning things about Kim Possible a lot that I didn't necessarily want to learn. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Have I watched Knights of Genevieve yet? I have not. If not, how much Sailor Moon have you watched to talk about how many people seem to not get it or just avoided it? After that stream that we did covering the dumbass opinions about trying to make a Dark Souls-esque world out of Sailor Moon, despite the fact that it's already Dark Souls-like, I have watched a lot of the mini adaptations of Sailor Moon, including the original as well as Crystal. Thank you for the 5, Wolf. Well, the number is now at 735 and 79 cents. I have consumed and I have watched enough of Sailor Moon that I can explain it long form as simply as I possibly could, episode by episode or season by season. Now, I want to watch Knights of Genevieve from Glitch Studios because I've been told it's animated very similar to something like the Owl House, but it's meant to keep away the content farmers, so I guess it's got like blood and guts and shit immediately when the fucking thing opens. And that's fucking whatever. Now, when you say, talk about how many people seem to not get it or avoided it, what do you mean by that, Extra Crusher? Also, I missed this chat from Avalon Apple while I was talking. The goal of 4-player party games is to humiliate your friends by picking a bottom tier and beating the shit out of all of them and being an insufferable prick about it until none of them want to talk to you anymore. Honestly, that's a base response, Apple, because it actually sometimes is. It depends. It depends on the type of friend you have. Sometimes 4-man lobby co-op, couch co-op is meant to be the way that some people treat King of the Losers in the case of Repo, where it's meant to be a party game. But I don't feel like everybody has that same opinion about it as other people do, because they're not really willing to even participate in that level of it, because that requires somebody being willing to be the bottom of the rung, and I don't think many people take that on. Or like people who are self-proclaimed video essayists that are always looking for things deeper when they have the most baddest ticks. So that's definitely anti-gramutia, and definitely Noralities in a nutshell. Oh, Lord. Just targeting those two alone, I feel like I should know more than both of them, because Noralities only ever looks at the lesbian output of giving herself the woman-loving woman desires that she clearly wants, but is not willing to truly find in the places where it exists, in the hardcore porn that she's clearly not consuming, or maybe she is consuming and she's lying about it. And then, for people like Anthony Gramuccia, he's doing this shit for attention. He is supposed to be the left-wing consumption filter, through which they say the chud-like opinions can be sieved off and consumed like it's being filtered, through an anti-chud filter. You hate how many types of posers are in the anime community because of the hoodweeds being your personal enemy, because they're the same ones that used to call you lame and weird for liking it? Yes, sir! You ain't gotta tell me about that. I'm, in fact, the African-American that was considered the nerd before Blurred ever entered into the social paradigm. Plenty of motherfuckers aping my shit and aping my style, but never paid goddamn scrupulations or ever paid goddamn tears and donos to receive the honor of being one. Just aping it without having to pay the social cost. Yes, sir, absolutely. I hate them. Internally. For everything they're fucking worth. Because the fact is that they're the ones that tried to create that second class and caste system where the rest of us are not allowed to be a part of it. I suppose you can't just say it's not just the weebs and it's also called weebs too. But all of them. I hate all of them. I hate all of them. I hate them with a passion. I hate them personally, and I hate what they represent as a group. Which is that they can try to ape a culture and not be a part of a culture while claiming to be the source of that culture. It's a suit. They're putting on a skin suit. They're putting on a skin suit and trying to take my stolen nerd valor. I fall for this right. I cringe for this right. You can't all take it from me. It belongs to me. Got one more minute for a couple more questions from the audience and or side tangents, and then I'm about to head out. Because I'm seeing a bunch of conversations that I want to get myself involved into right now that's on the timeline. One more question. Do you put paprika in pork and you got any good spice tips? For pork, in any type of cooking, it depends on how you want to marinate it and how you want to cook it. So if you want to use a marination process that involves a wet rub or a wet emulsion, where the meat drinks in the marinade, and then after the marinade you are cooking it low and slow to bring out that juicy fiber, or you are cooking it quick and fast in something like an oven to get a nice dried finish on the final pork, like for a pork belly. It really depends on how you want to spice it and how you want to season it. Salt, pepper, very important. Extra salt on the salted pork berry, very important too. But if you want to go for something that's as simple as a crock pot and you just want to get the rest of the meat off that bone and really make it nice, you want to go for a process of slow cooking through a crock pot. Because if you're going to put paprika in something, that's going to be adding a form of capsaicin. And with any capsaicin, you want to cook it low and slow so it has a lot of time to really penetrate that meat fiber and really break down that fat. So, pre-spice the water, put the spices in the water first, put the meat in the water, or at the same time that you add the meat, put the spices in the water, and then let it sit under pressure. That's a simple one. Did that answer your question, XO? Okay. I think that just about does it here for us today, chat. Getting back into the swing of things. Things are going to happen very slowly for me in the beginning and in the end. I am going back through all of my projects, and I am pushing my projects through very quickly. Later today, towards like the end of the night, I need to finish working on the upload of what I was going to be doing for the other day that my Lemonade file failed through. So that's going to happen later at the night, and later tonight, maybe I might broadcast, maybe I might not, but there are requests from Max Crusher that still need to be completed. We were supposed to do a live stream with Jay last night, but I guess it fell through because she was either asleep or she was busy and priorly engaged with something else. So, I'm going to be doing those events as content for audience interaction and engagement. They might be labeled as versus chat or not. I might do them during my normal time and proceedings when I'm normally doing a news segment, but I need to get through them because we've done Jaden and Jasmine. We now have a remainder of Pendulous Swing and Creature Kind. He also paid for, and I have required because I wanted to wait for a specific deal, and I was able to get it for cheaper. No Straight Roads, Wander Stars, and To the Moon. That would be a total of 6 things. We will do Wander Stars and No Straight Roads and To the Moon over time as I incorporate them. We still need to get through Clear Obscure, which I've been sitting on that for a bit because tree. But with the tree removed, I can now return to my normal work schedule, and that means my normal content schedule. So, lots of projects will be coming down the pipeline. First, I'm going to get the cooking shit out. Because I'm doing that by just editing it directly on TikTok, it's going to come out faster than the kimchi project. But the kimchi project is going to come out at the same time. And then all the other projects I've been working on will come out thoroughly. Some of them, not all of them. So the long form videos, those ones will be coming out when I get into the editing studio to work on them. Which might be what I do for the rest of today. So, with that being said, that content will be coming down the pipeline, and then for any else and all of your other concerns, simply get at me on Discord, get at me on any source in place where you can contact Carl and get Carl and car-related accessories and communicate that to me, as well as if you would also like to be able to buy content and be able to book content, you simply hand me the money and tell me what it is you want. and we will find a way to do it promptly. Thanks again to everybody who's in my audience that makes this stuff possible. Thank you again to content creators and content members like Exocrusher and Jay that make opportunities like doing Jaden and Jasmine possible. A personal thank you again to Liddell and creators like Liddell that make content like Jaden and Jasmine for us to consume and have fun watching, whether we consider it to be cringe or just a guilty pleasure or not. And thank you, audience members, for making my job possible. Because remember, help black people today, or you're a racist. I don't make the rules, I just forcefully enforce them. I will be seeing you all again tomorrow. Same Carl time, same Carl channel. And remember, I live only in your minds, but also in your hearts. So you might actually have cancer. I'll be seeing you all in therapy, and I'll be billing you for my therapist. Nah. Remember to spay and neuter your Carls. Do not feed your Carl after midnight, or it gets a taste for white woman. Goodbye, chat.